Welcome to the Fitness Plus Technology Podcast for club owners, operators, and fitness professionals. Each week, host Bryan O'Rourke brings you an expert interview with a global influencer at the crossroads of fitness and technology. You gain the insights, tools, and inspiration you need to stay connected to the pulse for what matters most for your business in the age of exponential technologies.
Hello, listeners. I'm your host, Bryan O'Rourke, and welcome to the podcast. I hope I got to be able to see you at the IHRSA event in San Diego. If not, I am sorry about that because I was on the lookout for everybody. It was a great event, really had a good time, learned a lot, and always remember when I go to these events like the one in San Diego, what a great experience it is. So thanks to the IHRSA team and everyone involved. Really enjoyed it. Really a positive outcome. So we'll see you next year, I believe in Los Angeles. In the next 2 weeks, of course, we'll be at the European Health and Fitness Forum and FIBO in Cologne. So please hit me up if you'd like to say hello. We have lots of fans over there, and I always love being in Cologne every year I can. So I'll be actually on stage on Thursday as well with some wonderful people from Apple and Anthony from Fitness Insider. So please try to make time to see me there if you can. So what I'm doing on this podcast is taking a recording from my talk, What's Next? You will see the deck as well uploaded. We'll have a link in the show notes. And some of my YouTube playlist and music playlist will be in the links in the show notes. I have a lot of people that ask me for my content, and I'm happy to share it publicly. That's part of what the Fitness Industry Technology Council does. As a nonprofit, you help underwrite all of these efforts to educate people on the responsible adoption of technology in our space. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy this recording of my talk at IHRSA on What's Next. Look, we're going to talk about what's next. I'd prefer to sit up here. You might see me a little better, but I love to roam around. So if that's okay with everyone, I'm going to stay here. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forward. That's why we have to think about what's next. Because every day you live your life and run your business, you're doing it in the future. But you have to look backwards to see what that's going to be and make good judgments. So the era of hyperchange. What's next? First thing I'm going to show you is purpose. We aren't realizing how deep our purpose goes. I'm going to show you what that means. Second is change, hyperchange. The rate of change I'm going to show you is so dramatic, it's almost unpredictable from year to year what's going to happen. But in 20 to 40 years out, I'm going to get about 90% of it right. And I'm going to show you why. Finally, growth. The good news in the midst of all this change is we have tremendous tailwinds. And that means that all the dynamics are set up for this industry, as I'm going to show you, to double its size in the next 14 years. And I'm going to show you why. And it's pretty amazing. The key drivers of what's next are these 6 mega dynamics. Demographics, prosumers, which are consumers and producers combined, economics, demographic shifts, technology, and institutions. The UN put together a special task force about 7 years ago to identify global plans of the world to coordinate around what our biggest challenges are. And number 3 is our health. But as you can see in this breakdown, a lot of these things are interrelated. As I'm going to show you, our food supply directly connects to our health, but it's a separate item. Our mindset, our state of minds directly relate to our state of well-being. These things are all interrelated, and guess who's at the precipice of it? We are. The second thing that is fundamental to us to keep in mind is right now our planet is producing about 4 times the amount of crap that we really need. And we've lived in a world that is primarily focused on consumption. We have to move to sustainable models. There is no doubt about it. And this is fundamental to our future as an industry. And we're all facing the same challenges across all industry spaces, which as we are at an inflection point, a critical tipping point. And when we're there, we have to realize that these dynamics and more, rapidly changing emerging technologies, evolving customer prosumers, and conditions It's reshaping our competitive landscape. As I go through these trends, keep in mind this lens that I've been talking about over the last 5 years. You have to think strategically in the mind of 4 drivers. One is mindset. How you view change, for example. Some people will view it as a threat, others an opportunity. Another is user experience. What real service, product, solution, jobs to be done are we really offering in our models, and how? And next, economics. How are we making money? Not money now, but sustainable money that is actually going to fuel our future. And finally, execution engines, human capital, enterprise platforms, these dynamics that help us execute the strategy. The truth is, as I'm going to show you, these are unprecedented times, and it requires unprecedented leadership. That's why you're here. You have a responsibility to do this, and I'm going to show you why. So let's talk about these dynamics. First, demographic shifts. Our planet is about aged out. Europe is now starting to decline in population. I'm going to talk about China later. And you can see we're getting older. Within 15, 20 years, the number of people 65 plus are going to double. And that's across the globe, where we have a lot of countries still with younger people. In other nations, it's going to be a lot more, because we're not having kids. Not having nearly the number of kids. And to show you that why this is important is 2 things. When you get older, wealth and health preservation are your number 1 and 2 priorities. And Apple Computer and Google and all these big money companies, they're not stupid. They're getting in the health business because it's a $12 trillion market. Where else are they going to go? Right? They're going to go here. Another thing on demographic shifts is gender. The number of women getting PhDs and master's degrees is outpacing men by 60-70% right now. And the influence of women in leadership is going to be a profound footprint on the future of our space. At the same time that's going on with females, gender itself is shifting. Our values and assumptions are shifting. 1 in 5 Gen Zs in the United States, according to Gallup, identify as LGBTQ. I'm not judging, I'm just telling you there are fundamental shifts in a lot of things going on that we have to embrace. And it leads to things like this. Ageism. If you thought discrimination around race or gender was a thing, this is going to be the next thing. And as operators, we need to think about that because it's actually an opportunity. There's a lot of people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s who can make tremendous leadership contributions and help young people get better faster. So cross-generational leadership is a massive opportunity for us. So all this, when we look at demographics, is a much more diversified world. That's our customer. Globalism, another one of the drivers. Globalism has done a lot of great things. One of the main reasons why, on an inflation-adjusted basis, as some of you know, fitness equipment has declined in price over the last 30 years is because of China. They had tremendous capability, cheaper labor, great infrastructure, and they really drove down pricing, part of that consumption economy. It also led to people getting out of abject poverty. The number of people escaping abject poverty has been one of the great results of globalism. But it's bloom coming off the rose. China will be one of the most unprecedented experiences in the next 50 years because their population is going to shrink by 40%. Okay, that's because they're going to hit a wall demographically, like a lot of nations. But when you have over 1 billion people in a nation that goes through, it's going to mean just unfathomable consequences. And at the same time with globalism, we have to embrace the reality of the future, because if we don't embrace the sustainable economy dynamic and we stick with a consumption-based dynamic, we have to make a decision. Do we want a good planet, good future, or we want a bad one? I'm going to show you why that's important to our industry space. But first, when we talk about globalism, the need for cooperation has never been higher. We have to figure out how to cooperate. And it's very hard in our world today to do, as I'll get into. We've been the beneficiaries of the peace dividend for now a while. And as we know, that's starting to come unraveled at a huge cost to the world. And then we're facing unprecedented challenges in advanced technologies. The notion that we can't regulate advanced AIs is a very dangerous notion. We have to figure this out, or we're going to be the people that suffer the consequences. And while this is going on in globalism, here's another interesting and positive thing. Our industry has become global. We have fitness facilities on every continent, including Antarctica. in the world. We are truly a global business now. Whether it's RSG buying Gold's Gym, whether it's Planet advancing into Europe and Australia, whatever it is a global industry. Suppliers manufacturing in different parts of the world, delivering. It is a global business now. It's not a national business. And we know this, when we think about globalism and the planet and sustainability and why that's important, every client we help get healthier has a direct bearing on the sustainability of our planet. Just look at the agricultural industrial complex. Over a fourth of all carbon emissions is related to our industrial food supply. As people get fitter and healthier, what happens? They consume more efficient proteins, different things. Like, look at me, I go organic. I want to eat things that are going to be healthy for me. And typically when you do that, you help the planet become more efficient. The other thing about what we do for people is mental health. If we want the world to cooperate, the more mindful and thoughtful people are because they're fitter and more in touch with their humanity, the better their mental health is, the better they're able to cooperate. It makes sense, right? And then we saw during COVID, when people don't have to get in cars and commute for an hour and a half, and they stop doing things they used to do, what happens to carbon emissions? It goes down. A fitter planet means a more sustainable planet. Now let's talk about institutions. Distrust. We are in a cycle of distrust that is very dangerous that we have to fix. It is a war between the status quo and the future, the good future. We have to fight that battle. That's the problem with our institutions today. And the Edelman Barometer, which is an annual survey of consumers around the world, they poll people on their feelings of trust. And you won't be surprised to learn that people don't trust the media, they don't trust their governments, they do not trust what they hear. They just don't. You know who they do trust? They trust CEOs. They trust you in this room. They trust things coming out of real people's mouths that do real stuff because that's believable. People aren't stupid. And that's why we have to do a better job of advocating for what we do and how good it is. We have to do that. The other dynamic around trust is the fact that our technology is not working the way it should. The good news is, as Kevin Kelly said, every technology brings with it consequences that are unforeseen, and the next set of inventions and technologies counter those problems and then create new ones. So it's a cycle, but it is fueling distrust. Anybody that's in marketing knows. Marketing attribution is bullshit. Okay? When you're Googling, you're getting people to spend money on ads and then they're telling you how good they're doing, don't trust it. People aren't stupid. Distrust we got to fix. And the good news is around technology and its contribution to distrust, there are people out there that are reinventing what that is. This is one example, because the death of the smartphone will happen by the end of 2030. Thankfully, there are financiers and people, this is run by a bunch of ex-Apple people who are reinventing what the smartphone is, that are trying to figure out how to solve these problems, and they will. So you know this guy, right? If you're in a gym, you know this one. The guy was telling me a story about the two ladies that showed up at spinning class and put the circle lights right there in the class while they live stream their event. So consumers, producers, and change, prosumer. It's an interesting dynamic because the prosumer defines the market today. It used to be we sold to customers. Now the customers are more important than us selling to them. It's really about what they think and believe. And the reality is that our lives, a lot of the aspects of our lives from a prosumer's perspective, they've changed. And they've changed a lot. Whether you're talking about people going to university or not, are you talking about the fact that occupancy levels at office buildings are reaching highs again and they're going to get worse? Because if anyone's going to downtown Houston or downtown wherever, there's just not the number of people there anymore. For fully a third of people who are professionals, they're never going to go back to the office full time, and I can't blame them. The other thing that's happening is people are reassessing their lives. After COVID, they reassess their lives. Not only are they getting older, and so they're reflecting on what am I doing, they're going, there are options. I need to design my life in a different way. We need to start thinking about what the hell we're spending our time on and why. Our families have changed. Over 1 in 4 kids are raised in a single-parent household. A larger percentage are raised by other family members. They're just, all the dynamics that we might have assumed were bedrocks 30 years ago, they're changing dramatically. And Simon Sinek, and people know who Simon Sinek is. And this is creating a lot of dynamics in our workplace, in our customers, and he talks a little bit about it.
You're like the intern and you're sending an email to the CEO going, I don't think that you, like, it's like, no, there's other ways to do that. It starts with empathy. And we have to understand, it's for better or for worse, the changing nature of what work has become in our lives. If you go back a bunch of decades, it used to be that you got your sense of purpose from church, you got your sense of community from bowling league, you knew your neighbors, you barbecued with them on the weekends, and work, I was loyal to work and work was loyal to me. At some point I did a gold watch. Aside, there's an entire generation that when I talk about the gold watch, they have no idea what I'm talking about, right? That's how much the world has changed. And work was simply a place that I made a living to pay my bills. But I still enjoyed it was still loyalty. Over the course of time, church attendance is down, bowling clubs don't exist anymore, we don't talk to our neighbors, we become very insular. And what's happened is all of that pressure is now being put on the office. I now expect my company to be the place where I get my purpose, the place I get my friendships, the place I get my community, the place I get my social life. Now we've also added the place you have to agree with all of my politics, right? That's a new one. And it's even now, especially during COVID, it's gotten even higher, especially for this young group, where you also have to be my therapists, my therapy. I'm going to bring all of my problems to work.
And it's not just our employees, it's our customers. It's the same dynamic. If you're running businesses like I am, you deal with this. A lot of people are projecting their bullshit on you. It has nothing to do with you, right? It's changed. But here's the thing, we talk about the prosumer, right? The incredible amount of choice. That's part of that. The expectation dynamic, the tremendous amount of choice. And here's the good news for us. When you think objectively and you think about choice and the prosumer, here's the good news for us. It's why I said we have tremendous tailwinds. These things I'm covering, and as Nielsen IQ has identified, they are the force drivers that is going to grow the business by double in the next 14 years. Because they're unrefutable. They're unrefutable. I'm touching them right now. I touched on a few of them. Age is going to double by 2050. People over 65, that's actually understated. You look at the various healthcare costs. Anybody that gets sick knows. I mean, you're in trouble. I mean, these are the mega trends that are driving our market, and they're in the prosumer's mind, believe me. That's what's going to drive demand for our services. And other things around the forces impacting the future of health is, as we said, rapid tech adoption, generational shifts, new outlooks on life, all Nielsen IQ, ag tech advancements, policies. And you can see people, when they think about their health, they start in a very basic reptilian way. Protect myself. Protect myself. As humans become aware of the benefits of taking care of themselves, becoming mindful of what they're thinking, doing, eating, exercising, they move from protected, to preserved, to aspirational, evolving, to altruism, purpose. The better we do connecting purpose to what we're about, the stronger we're going to be. And so these are the kind of trends you don't hear about right now that are going to become formidable in the next decade. Aging with dignity. Even the whole notion of death and how we cope with it has to be readdressed. It's too it's fatalistic, but we have to figure out a better way to process life. Aging with dignity, mental health advocacy, healthy eating for all, sustainable wellness, there's that word again. And while this is going on with the prosumer, for all the reasons we've identified, at the same time, our world has become, of course, increasingly digital across all generational bounds, with people utilizing pure digital solutions for their health and wellness at alarming percentages compared to alternatives. And we know now that over 1.5 billion people on the planet use some form of digital tool to help them with their health. 1.5 billion. At the same time, we know that club chains, bricks and mortar operators, are figuring out how to develop hybrid omni-channel models to service members, whether they're in a club or not. You've seen this in retail, travel, everything. While that's going on with the prosumer, the other thing is fitness as a component of a broader group of things. And mainly, dimensions of wellness, with all kinds of new models emerging. We see some examples, like wellness and travel. Okay, if you go to Airbnb and book book a place, you can get a wellness experience while you're there for a little more money. Wellness in weight, wellness in senses, biohacking. If you're familiar with peptides and other things that are happening, this is all becoming mainstream, but it's driven by the same dynamics. And it's all connected to purpose. Remember that graphic that shows driving to altruism? That's purpose. People have to connect the dots. The better we do showing them the breadcrumbs to the trail, the better we will become.
Mindfulness apps, sleep aids, smart foods, smart bikes, health trackers, aromatherapy, injectables, organic everything. People are spending more on wellness than they ever have before. Wellness is now a $1.5 trillion market worldwide, and it's growing at a clip of 5 to 10% each year. McKinsey research shows that consumers are most interested in 6 wellness categories: health, fitness, nutrition, appearance, sleep, and mindfulness. New wellness products and services are hitting the market every day. So what might wellness look like in 2030? Let's look into the future.
So we're not going to focus on all these things. We don't have enough time, but McKinsey does talk about fitness specifically right here.
I definitely don't see a world where it's just the at-home solutions and there's no gyms and no studio. I don't see that at all. I always like to say Starbucks likes to think it can be a third place, and a gym can very well be a third place. And we'll also see, I think, a next step in terms of the ability to track or to give people ability to, hey, how do I know I'm improving? Tracking actually plays a very strong role. Not in optimizing everything, but in actually playing a strong motivation and guidance or coaching role.
This is going to be important. I'm going to get to the coaching role later and what that's going to look like. The other thing when we look at this issue is what's happening with people in the prosumer is the entrepreneurial nature of our world today. There are so many fitness professionals that are doing their own thing, and many of them very successfully, either through pure digital coaching, other forms of training, all on their own, because the technology platforms exist to do that. And that is a huge component of our industry space, and it's not going to go away. It's going to get more, a larger component of what we do. And in the end, when we think about the prosumer, it's also, whether it's digital or in person, we are communal. Humans are communal. They want to do things together. They want to be connected around common purpose. So let's talk now about economics. Remember, these are the 6 mega drivers as to what's next. Economics is a big thing. Of course, in the last 15 years, we've had unprecedented money supply. Some would argue longer than 15 years. And that has fueled a lot of things. It's fueled asset bubbles. It's fueled a bunch of stuff that are going on. We can do a whole talk on that. There's unprecedented levels of debt. There's a lot of pressure and questions around economic slowdown ahead. And what the intensity of that might be. At the same time, funding for startups in the space is pulled back as a result of that rather significantly. And that's not bad, because we're due for a little bit of a culling of those that really deserve to survive and those that really are sucking resources out of others that don't or should. Around this point is a guy I've followed for many years. I recommend you listen to his podcast. He wrote a book on Corona called Post-Corona, Scott Galloway. A really interesting guy. If you're not already listening to him, whether you like his politics or not, he's pretty interesting. And during, right post-COVID or during COVID, he graphed out, basically on the left, the dispersion. And he showed examples of industries within dispersion, which is an increase in valuations against time, increase in allocation of capital against time, and you can see the dynamics there. And so dispersion really has to do with what digital enables you to do to distribute services at a very cheap price, actually near zero for every incremental revenue, $1 you pick up. And this is the way our industry is going to be impacted, and he's right. It's going to create new opportunities for certain arenas that weren't there before and take away others that are. This really represents what was termed the long tail a number of years back in that book, whereas when you digitize things like your omni-channel service for clubs, you really are in a position where you can offer a lot of very specific personalized stuff at a very cheap, if near zero price of distribution. So this creates a huge plethora of choice for consumers. That's not going away. The other thing we see from an economic perspective is the bifurcation of the market. Value chains in bricks and mortar fitness, like in retail, have driven growth in the market because the reality is that if you built a traditional IHRSA club like you would in 1970, you would not make any money. Because the reality is that on an inflation-adjusted basis, membership dues have not gone up, but the cost of building and operations have increased 500% since 1980. So what happened? Budget models came around. They lowered their cost of operation, they broadened their reach by the lower price. The customer wants to pay very little for that. At the same time, luxury has emerged, right? So if you're in LA, you know this club, you know, God rest his soul, the visionary for that, Hyman. You know SoulCycle, the most profitable concept of the 2000, luxury, all luxury. People pay a premium for that. They're happy to do it if the service level is there. They go that way. Anything in the middle has gotten squeezed out. Basic fit on value, just like Planet on value. But now we have new emergent models in economics that kind of reflect the trends that I've identified. Things like Fountain Life, $19,500 to go through your first complete scan. It tells you everything you need to know using AI and other data collection platforms. And it starts prescribing how you need to affect your lifestyle to live longer. And you get a team, and they actually sell you health insurance. All right, it's founded by Peter Diamandis. Genius guy. It's personalization, personalized, super technologically focused healthcare that's based on primary prevention. They've got a number of locations that are growing significantly. Another one is the Blue Zone location that's being created in Miami right now. Okay, these things, the capital is being driven to them into thinking, all map what I'm showing you is going to happen with consumers. And so we also have things like pure digital solutions, apps like Noom, which reaches over 50-some million users. And it uses behavioral science in an app to actually help people change their lifestyle through diet. If you haven't already, I use MyFitnessPal to track my calories and interfaces with all my Apple Health, etc., and I use it for free. These are the new models that people are adopting increasingly. And then we have completely different models. The recent acquisition by Weight Watchers of Sequence, where Wegovy will be prescribed to their members through telemedicine. Okay, this just happened last week. You see these mashups, because what's the number one reason people join clubs? Losing weight. All right? We also can talk about content. And the future of content is coming. We'll do a whole show on that another time. But a plethora of content to motivate, to inform, to educate. We have at our fingertips so much information in ways that we never had just 5 years ago. It's truly amazing. And what that means for our businesses is we have to begin strategically with a digital-first way of thinking. Because if we don't, we're not going to reach our customer. That doesn't mean we throw the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to experience in the facility. That's as important or equally. But we have to start with that thinking. And going forward for everyone, it's going to be more critical than ever that we really know our business model canvas. And we really answer the question, how are we serving the customer and why? How are we really making sustainable profit? How are we going to execute this? Now let's talk about technology. That's the final mega driver. And as I identified in 2005, when I was here talking for my first presentation, I talked about the idea of the physical and digital world merging. People really didn't know what that meant, per se, back in 2005. The smartphone of Apple's hasn't been invented yet, so they didn't really know what it meant. Kevin Kelly, who was one of the founding editors of Wired magazine, published this book, 12, The Inevitable Shifts, technological shifts that are going to change our world. I won't go into all these details, but you can check this out again. Tweet me, email me, call me, I'll get you the book. But becoming, cognifying, all these dynamics, remixing, questioning, screens, that's a big one. These are the dynamics that he identified. So the point of me showing you this is, it's not ending. The technological shift is not ending. But we have to become more thoughtful in thinking, what do we want technology to be and how do we want it to serve us? Do we want our lives to be like this? Through a pair of glasses we wear? That we're in an attention economy where we're constantly being interrupted? Where we're constantly being taken off task? Do we really want to live in this world? Because that's what it's going to. We don't. We really don't. I was mentioning screens. This is interesting about it too. There's these dichotomies of why we have to make more thoughtful choices about what technologies we want to adopt. You see Mark Andreessen talking about this. In a world where we can put TV screens on huge walls for $100, the cost of specialized education is going up. It's crazy. There's a lot of disconnection. We're going to talk about what that means for us when it comes to tech. Instead of jumping at the next shiny new object, really thinking about why we're doing that in the first place. But behind tech is the big drivers behind tech, and why this is going to be a formidable contributor to the future is just processing power. And not in the way we think of it, because what's going on right now in our world and technology is we're learning more and more how much we don't really understand about the world we live in. We don't really understand as much as we thought about our bodies. We don't really understand about the very nature of physics. A lot of this stuff is being challenged. You can go read the scientific publications. You know, quantum physics is being reinvented. You know, do you know that matter changes how it looks based on who's observing it? Scientists are showing this in the collider. They don't understand how that's possible. So when we think about processing power and how it's gone through chips that have grown your smartphones, that's just touching the surface of what is underway right now in processing power. And what that means, I'm going to show you. But if you follow quantum computing, this is real now. The supremacy of quantum computing has been established, and this is what it means.
The word quantum computer is a little misleading because it sounds like a computer. And when people think of computer, they think of a phone or a laptop. The truth is, the phone and the laptop and even a very powerful supercomputer all operate according to the same fundamental rules. And a quantum computer is fundamentally different.
The classical bit stores information as a 0 or 1, and a quantum bit can be both a 0 and 1 at the same time. If you have 2 quantum bits, then there are 4 possible states that you can put in superposition. With 3 qubits it's 8, 4 qubits it's 16, but grows exponentially.
What does that mean? It means that damn thing can process stuff a lot more powerfully than what we have right now, and it's already doing it. What does that mean? Driving sequencing of DNA, driving the invention of new solutions and medicines for us at rates that were just impossible a few years ago. All these things will directly tie to the health of our planet. Things like we're seeing with peptides or Wegovy or other drugs, this is just the tip of the iceberg of what's coming. And as these processing powers get stronger, and we'll get into more about it, so much is going to become evident that we can do to help ourselves be healthier, more sustainable, etc. in the future. Of course, we all know about this, and you know, the facts are that we've got a little ways to go before people are going to be comfortable wearing these things. Yes, I was a glass hole at one time, and you remember me wearing those stupid things. And Apple coming out with their devices. Gaming is a major component which is driving this of a lot of people's lives today. You know, especially some younger people, but a lot of guys in their 40s and 50s, they game a lot. That's really what the metaverse is about. You're familiar with, of course, these kind of solutions that are very cool. If you haven't tried these before, I recommend you do with Supernatural or some of the other apps. Very effective. And as this gentleman I met in Amsterdam last year, Robert, outlined, in virtual reality, people can experience things in the virtual world that then affect their physical world, which is fascinating. So what that means is, if you have Parkinson's, or let's say you've lost a limb, you could go into the physical world, or the digital world, and imagine you not losing your limb. And when you become back in the physical world, the sensations you had disappear. Your Parkinson's symptoms are diminished because your brain is that powerful. If it's living in the digital world in a certain way, it convinces your mind that that's the way it is. So you can imagine the possibilities. This is science. He did a great job of explaining it. And we start minimizing and miniaturizing how our eyes see things through these technologies, through Mojo and other solutions that are contact lenses you put in your eyes to see three-dimensional or mixed reality. This is what the potential offers. Also, sound, of course. You've read the Apple filings with sensors through the ears for your different biomeasures. Voice, and this is a funny thing. Anybody that's used Siri knows it sucks, right? And as you see natural language processing happen, within a year and a half, our voice assistants are going to get much smarter than what they've been. Much smarter. So the idea of what we're going to be doing with frictionless voice is going to be way beyond what you've experienced in the last few years, very shortly. Sensors, of course, we could go do a whole show on this. Sensors continue to advance. Now, Apple made its announcement on its patents for glucose. You see hydration. There are all these other measures and biomarkers that are now getting captured, and we're going to learn so much more. Of course, there's directly linking to the brain. That's another thing. And we'll talk about other things with technology. Blockchain. Blockchain remains a very nascent technology. It's very new. Don't expect a lot of breakthrough here. It's a very inefficient platform from a power consumption perspective, but from a privacy and other solutions, it's something that will emerge, just not as quickly as people think. And the related products like the NFTs, when you see Starbucks adopt these things, they have money to spend, so they're going to experiment. But until there are more use cases, I wouldn't pay a lot of attention to this stuff. The metaverse I mentioned before, yes, it's a thing. People love to talk about it, but as you know, the metaverse has been around for 20 years. Okay, First Light was around in 2003. So I love when people rediscover things that were already there. It's really funny. But as our processing powers get better, our ability to do things in a digital world will obviously increase. But there are other more important things that have a lot of risks, like avatars in a digital self. Watch this.
Hey, we're here together in Horizon, and this is the first time that we've done this at Connect. And this is a preview of our next generation of avatars. They're so much more expressive and detailed than anything else today, and they have this unique meta style to them. But I'm excited to start rolling these out later next year on phones, VR headsets, and more. Hey, Igram.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, want to update everyone on the latest with the avatars ecosystem?
Yes, we have so many exciting things going on. We want you to be able to use avatars anywhere you want to express yourself.
And we're also bringing avatars to video chat.
That's right. Starting with Messenger and WhatsApp, if you want, you'll be able to show up as an avatar. It's going to add a whole new dimension to video chat.
Avatars are going to be central to how we express ourselves in the future. And this is a unique opportunity to build some really interesting things at the intersection of expression, social interaction, creation, and commerce.
So if Carrie with Style Studios wants to replicate herself to train people around the world, we could create 10,000 of them. Okay, that would be awesome. So the idea of digital twins, the idea of creating experiences by replication and driven by these processing things and natural language processing, which we get, this is going to be a real thing pretty soon. I'm going to show you how real it is again with another quick clip here.
And we've made a lot of progress with what we call instant avatars.
All you need for the scan is your phone, and you can pretty much do this anywhere with reasonable lighting. She scans her face from different angles with a neutral expression for about 30 seconds, then spends another minute and a half making a variety of expressions. And that's really all there is to it.
Hi guys, my 3D avatar is ready for use in my phone or VR. It just took a few hours to generate after my scan, and the team's working on making that processing a whole lot faster. Now, obviously this isn't the same quality as you just saw with the 2.0 codec avatars. However, they're still pretty expressive and realistic.
Get the idea? So let's touch on what everyone's been talking about. The thing 5 years ago when I talked at Europe Active and everyone laughed me off the stage about AI and what it was going to be. That's funny. You all have seen all the press and coverage, right? You understand what natural language processing is. Basically, people put a bunch of information in a huge pile. They gave it to a processor that just went through and created a bunch of connections to then start saying, I understand what these things mean, not in the sentinel sense, but in the general sense of patterns. And that's what it is. But as you know, ChatGPT-4 just came out. I recommend you get an account and experiment with it. It's very, very curious to use. But let's hear about some of the implications of this.
GPT-4 takes what you prompt it with and just runs with it. From one perspective, it's a tool, a thing you can use to get useful tasks done in language. From another perspective, it's a system that can make dreams, thoughts, ideas flourish in text in front of you.
GPT-4 is incredibly advanced and sophisticated. It can take in and generate up to 25,000 words of text, around 8 times more than ChatGPT. It understands images and can express logical ideas about them. For example, it can tell us that if the strings in this image were cut, the balloons would fly away.
This is the place where you just get turbocharged by these AIs. They're not perfect, they make mistakes, and so you really need to make sure that you know the work is being done to your level of expectation. But I think that it's fundamentally about amplifying what every person is able to do.
GPT-4 training finished last August, and everything that's been happening in the past few months up until we released it has been a giant sprint to make it safer, more aligned, and also more useful. We have put in already a lot of internal guardrails around things like adversarial usage, unwanted content, and privacy concerns. And when we release a model, we know things are not done. We know we have to learn, we know we have to update, we know we have to keep improving all the systems around it to make it suitable for society.
To me, the most compelling use cases of these technologies will come from starting with a real human need. The obvious one where these systems have really incredible potential is in education.
GPT-4 can teach a huge range of subjects. Imagine giving a 5th grader a personal math tutor with unlimited time and patience. It's a great tool to bring learning to everyone in a way that is personalized to their skill level.
GPT-4 brings the dream of having the most useful, helpful assistant to life. It's really about adding as much value to everyday life as possible.
The partnership that OpenAI has with Microsoft is to shape this technology into something that's going to be useful for the world.
The power of AI, hopefully, is that it can help us be more productive, which ultimately leads to better quality of life.
The development of the transistor, the computer of the internet, the semiconductor industry, all the programming languages, everything came together to produce AI technology. And while it is very limited, it is already easy to imagine what the impact of a successor many generations down the line will look like.
We think that GPT-4 will be the world's first experience with a highly capable and advanced AI system. So we really care about this model being useful to everyone, not just the early adopters or...
So remember about this, so you could have the best team in the world of physios, nutritionists, all these experts, and a machine is going to know how to do a better job of prescribing whatever solution there is than they will. This is where it's going. It means hyper-personalization at a very high level. And the importance of AI for business is another thing. The way we operate our clubs, the way we operate our businesses. Now, the thing about this is that certain businesses that don't have access to huge unified data sets will not be able to benefit from this as much. You need the huge benefit of large data sets to make this work. But in certain things like the law, in other things that have massive data sets, you're going to see attorneys being able to do their work in about 5% of the time that it takes them now on technical stuff. And like all professions, what are they going to be able to do with that time? They're going to be able to spend more of it with their clients, just like in our business, empathizing, helping the psychology, doing those things. The technical stuff won't matter as much because it'll be taken care of for you. And on the floor of the show, we have lots of different companies that are talking about AI. This is Mitsubishi's firm that they're going to be spinning out. There are many others, and you should go and see those. But more than anything, it's about how we think about technology, because before, technology was a little more of a concept that was generalized or subjective in its nature. When professionals start using tools in different ways, it's going to change the way we perceive and actually adopt tech going forward, like this video. So that's real. So I was saying, it's the way we think. I've got about 6 minutes left. I'll show you a robot here that's actually being driven by natural language processing. It is also a robot.
Hi, Annika. How are you?
Hello, I am doing well. How are you?
Yeah.
Now that's real. It's not someone talking in a microphone. So when we think about what's next, and I'm wrapping this up, hang in there with me. Remember, next level results require next level thinking. Also remember, as I told you in the beginning, it's up to us. And as we see the future, we act. As we see the future, we act. And as we act, so we become. So this is a video, I have 2 left, that I've done now for 5 years, and it's a fan favorite, so I've got to play it every year, just because I think it illustrates we are all ostriches. The question is, What ostrich do we want to be? You tell me the answer. Because the reality is that the innovation that we're in the midst of, it's only about 10% psychology. Our technology is really 90% psychology. It's what's between our ears. So as I went through the 6 drivers of what's next, we talked about health, $12 trillion marketplace. We talked about hyperchange and the era of hyperchange. We believe 5% to 6% year-over-year growth, which will mean the industry will double in 14 years. We talked a little bit about business models, location-based, digital and hybrid services. So Airbnb offering wellness, Lululemon offering group fitness centers in their facilities, Fountain Life offering medical integration. You get the idea. This is what our industry is changing into. Delivery systems being hybrid, digital, or pure physical. And we are at an inflection point. It's up to us to create the business models that haven't been invented yet, because we're going to need to address the opportunities that are ahead of us. And there are a lot of opportunities. We also have to be mindful about the adoption of technology so we don't lose the human spirit in what we're doing. We don't let the tail wag the dog. Here are some tools I recommend that you read and look at. If you haven't seen these before, you can reach out to me. If you need them, I'll get them to you. Follow Prof. Galloway's podcast. This book is one I highly recommend, Seeing Around Corners. It's the best strategy book out in the market today by me, Rita McGrath. Forget your Porter's 5 Forces, read this instead. Follow my Fitness Plus Technology podcast, where I interview leaders from around the space. It's free. We talk about stuff like this. And remember what's next. Purpose. You got that? Rapid hyperchange and growth.
Hello, listeners. This is Bryan O'Rourke, and thanks so much for listening to the Fitness Plus Technology podcast. The podcast is made possible by the Fitness Industry Technology Council, a consortium of global brands working together to enhance the adoption of technologies in the fitness space. Our company, Videri Ventures, which is invested in Vertimax, Montezuma, Gold's Gym, Houston, Texas, and Fitness 24/7 Thailand, also underwrites the podcast, along with our service companies, Integris Advisors, Moon Mission Media, and others. Please feel free to share this podcast with your colleagues. And if I can be of any assistance to you, don't hesitate to reach out, bryanko'rourke@gmail.com, or find me on any of the major social networks. Have a great day, and thanks for listening.